Hello and welcome to the Storytelling for the Soul podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Kanata, and this is the place we talk about all things expressive writing and other creative techniques, all with a little bit of Buffy the Vampire Slayer thrown in. Buckle up and enjoy. Welcome back to this week's episode. Today we're talking all things journaling or writing for anxiety. Now, I do want to preface this discussion by saying that what I'm really referring to in this podcast is more day-to-day anxiety and those times in your life where your anxiety might spike due to a particular challenge or life circumstance. If you're listening to this and you are experiencing extreme anxiety and you are finding that anxiety is slowly taking over every element of your life, I do encourage you to seek help because anxiety has a way of snowballing. And I've definitely been there at different times of my life where often the way that we cope with anxiety is by avoiding whatever we feel is triggering that anxiety. And the problem is that the triggers are often more than one thing. And as you start avoiding several aspects and different things in your life, slowly over time, you find that your life becomes smaller and smaller. And it's no way to live. So if you're experiencing extreme anxiety, please do seek professional help. I suggest getting in touch with your GP or primary care physician, and they should be able to help you towards the next steps, and know that I am definitely thinking of you. So let's get into journaling for anxiety. Now, first up, having a daily practice has helped me so much with my anxiety because I feel like as I go about my day and I'm wrapped up in everything that I have to do, and life can sometimes feel all-consuming depending upon what I've got going on, I don't actually take the time to check in with myself. So having a very clear morning routine, which I treat very much like an appointment that I wouldn't blow off. It's super simple. It's 5 minutes. I sit down, I jot down the date, I jot down the day of the week. I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I set my intention for the day. If my to-do list is starting to become ridiculous and starting to potentially tip me into overwhelm, I will ask myself a question. What on this list can wait until tomorrow? Because here's the thing, when we logic check ourselves, often so many of the things that we feel are urgent are not really all that urgent at all. And if they're done tomorrow or even next week or the week after, the world will still continue revolving. So I do that. That's really a really great tip if you are going through a super hectic period. And then I also do like to use a daily affirmation. Now, I've been using the same Louise Hay affirmation for a long time now, and it's super simple. It's all is well. Now, the reason this works so well for me is because when the mental gymnastics of my mind do a number on me, I feel like it's a really easy sentence, all is well, to bring me back to the root, to bring me back to the power of now, as Eckhart Tolle would say. And 99.9% of the time, when I ask myself, is all well now? The answer is yes. Because the reality is, if something was urgent or there was an emergency, I would be busy taking care of whatever that emergency at the time is. So the thing with anxiety is that it's all of the what ifs or the living in the future and what could happen and what might happen and the contemplation of 100 different scenarios that often get the better of you. Now, there are times in life where bad things happen, or more accurately, things happen and we consider them to be either good or bad. Now, in those moments where something I feel does not go to plan, which, let's face it, if you live long enough, it's going to happen to you. There are 3 really simple questions that I like to ask myself. Number 1, will this matter in one day? Now, very often, the answer to this question is yes. Whatever has surfaced will still matter in one day. Then I move on to question number 2. Will this still matter in 1 month? Now, every now and again, I still answer yes to this question, but most times I often think to myself, actually, in a month, I would have moved on and I'll be busy dealing with whatever else surfaces in 1 month's time. And then I get to the final question is, will this still matter in 1 year? Now, it's not too often that I answer yes to this question. Of course, there are instances where things will matter in a year and beyond. And then I move on to working on acceptance and contemplating how I can change or accept the situation, because often I can't change anything. I can only do what's within my power. However, I can often change my perspective. And when there are those things in life that are outside of our control, if you think about it, lots and lots and lots is actually outside of our control in life. For as much as, and I have to say this is more of an anxious person kind of thing, as much as we try to control every single aspect of our life, there's so much that is completely outside of our control. So I'm starting to work on acceptance more than anything else, if I'm honest with you, as I mature. Now, the final thing that I want to share in this episode is more of a weekly or a monthly practice. Just see what works for you. And basically what I'll do is I'll look over the last week's or the last month's worth of daily writing or journaling, and I will ask myself 3 simple questions. What is consistently draining me? Number 2, what is consistently energizing me? And then out of those 2 lists that I've come up with, I ask myself, what is within my power to do more or less of? And with this, it's really important not to dote on the list where you can't do anything about certain things, because we all have those things in life. It's just the reality of living. As I said, in those cases, I work more on acceptance than doting on the reality that things are happening that are not particularly to my liking. But with the other side of the coin, so anything that I've got control over, I will then actively start to ask myself, well, how can I do more of these things or less of these things? And what I try to do is weave those things into my life in a very practical approach. So I don't try to turn my whole life upside down over the next week. I do things in stages, basically, and I call it habit stacking. So, for example, if I'm already writing daily and I've established that practice and I decide, meditating for 10 minutes is also positively adding to my life, I'll then add that onto the daily writing practice. And then those 2 things moving forward, I do together as a tag team. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's episode. What has helped you with anxiety, even if it has nothing to do with journaling or writing? Perhaps it's other creative techniques like art therapy or something like that. Always very keen to hear from you. Reach out to me, info@sarahkanata.com. You can find out more about my work and monthly membership at sarahkanata.com, and I shall speak with you next week.